color coded so that they don't get confused. Oh no, I answered this one incorrectly. We know that number 1 is city, and that's blue, and number 2 is province, and that's pink, and number 3 is address, and that's green. And after they've finished, I'm going to ask them to take a picture and send it to me. I'm going to embed that in their individual files and collect the information. I've heard a lot of people talking about whether how to stop the students from cheating. And that's a difficult question to answer, even if we're in the classroom. But I'm going to explain to them. I'm going to explain to their family members if they're available. And this is going to be ongoing, reminding them that if they pass all these tests and go to the next level, they need to understand all of this stuff. And I'm also going to time limit it. So they're taking a photo right as they answered. And then live, I'm going to say, okay, Fatima, I got your test. Okay, I have yours now, Harka. And just wait for all of these to come in. We know our students. I'm going to say, as teachers, we do understand our students. And if we expect that someone hasn't done this alone, then I'm just going to make a note of that they've done this with help. And, helping people is a nice thing. So you got to sort of help them understand that cheating isn't going to service them. And again, you might want to use translators. But I would never accuse my students of cheating, but I might do a little one-on-one assessment in a breakout room to see if that really was an indication of their honest answers. Okay. And here's my listening assessment. This is Carrie and Jana. They're actually in the audience listening now. They're my supervisor and the link manager at my school. And what I do always, and I've done even when I'm in the building, is I use my managers and coordinators and supervisors to help me for some of my listening assessments. So the students get to listen to different people besides me, right? And they get to be part of the community, and it makes the managers and the supervisors much more approachable on the part of the student. So what I would do is I would invite Carrie or Jana, both of them, but one at a time, into my classroom. And I would ask Carrie some questions. And it would go something like this. I would say, what is your name? How do you spell that? And then I would ask Carrie, could you repeat that, please? Or could you speak slowly, please? And then I'd say, oh, is that Kerry? And this would give the students an opportunity to hear it a number of times. And then again, they've already written in their notebooks, number 1, 2, 3, and 4. My listening assessment is 4 questions, a name and a phone number for 2 different people. So we've got Carrie's name and then his phone number, and then we've got Jana's name and then her phone number. And then you have your supervisors in your class, and they get to know your students, and your students get to know them, and they get familiar with what's going on in your classroom. So it's sort of a win-win situation. And I can easily record the answers for the students on my Google Classroom in their individual files. And there again, I have my evidence. And don't my managers look great? Okay, on to the next one. So this is how I would present my speaking assessment. And when I'm in class, I do all my speaking assessments one-on-one so that I can help guide the students when it's happening. I know in the upper levels, sometimes it's 2 students doing a role play, but in the Foundation and Literacy 1 class, for sure, we do a one-on-one. And it's great to use visuals when you're doing a speaking assessment with your students. So down at the bottom, I have sort of my criteria and my notes. What I'm doing when I'm doing this one-on-one with the students is I'm I'm bringing them into a breakout room in Zoom, and I'm actually recording what's happening. So I'm gathering evidence in that way. And it's easy enough for me to click these answers and make notes afterwards, or to do it when I'm talking with the students. So this assessment for housing, this speaking assessment, had 4 questions. Actually, 3 questions on the part of the teacher and 1 question on the part of the student. So I would show them the image, and again, after lots of scaffolding and work on that, I would ask them, how many bedrooms do you have? And then they have the visual prompt to help them, which is something we should do for literacy students anyway. So they're getting a level appropriate assessment, a speaking assessment one-on-one, and I've got that recorded, and I've got everything in my Google Classroom to keep it organized so I don't have to rely on the carrier pigeons. Okay, so I've done my thematic needs assessment, my module needs assessment, my module plan, and I've planned all my assessments, my first set of assessments anyways, not for all the modules. And now it's time to start planning my activities, because so as it says here, online activities need to be as diverse and as active as they were in the classroom, or else this may be the result. We need to embrace best practices, whether or not we're on a computer online or we're in the classroom, and do our best to appeal to the multiple intelligences that we do have in our classroom. I really like to get up and move around and dance and be silly, and it really encourages the students to do that as well. So an active classroom is one where the students are awake and engaged in learning. And I'm going to present to you just a few different activities that I thought would work well for a housing unit, so that your students don't sleep while they're on the computer. So one of the first things I would do is ask my students to take a picture of the numbers on their house. These numbers may seem quite arbitrary to our students. They may not have had a chance to look at it or noticed it, or it been important. If they're getting a ride to and from school, this may not be of paramount importance to them. But to start getting them to look at this environmental print around and recognize the numbers and figure out what they're associated with will help them in the future. It's a safety issue that's really important, I think, to get students to understand their address and the meaning of it. So I took these pictures and I would ask my students to do the same. And then I'd get a better idea if they understand their house. I'll also say that if our students live in an apartment, we'll address that as well, because there's a few different numbers to memorize there. There's the number on the front of their building, and then there's the number on their door. And we will start looking at street signs and such, but I just want to isolate one part of their address to start with. And then I would ask them to find a piece of mail. Now, I always ask my students to bring mail into the classroom, and over half of them forget. So this is a nice platform to ask the students to walk into the other room and get a piece of mail and bring it to their work area so that they can look at these things. So I would ask them to circle the numbers that are the same on the address on the front of their house as it is on their piece of mail. And we're starting to dissect what an address is, because it has streets and numbers and sometimes names. I live in a part of Calgary where it's all numbered, but my students live in some named streets areas as well. Now, what I would get them to do here is I would get them to write or copy their address onto a piece of paper and ask them to put it into their wallet for safety issues. When I lived in Taiwan for 10 years, I always had my address on a piece of paper because my accent wasn't very good, apparently. But this is a skill using activity, and you can do some documented observation of your students actually doing this, and this be a skill using activity. So that's just one of the things that I hope would help them get out of their seat and move around and look at the things around them so they're not sitting for that long. Another another thing I might do. This is Jeremy Wilson, my partner teacher here, and at first sight, it might look like he's actually in his own house, but he's not. These are virtual backgrounds, and if you're in Zoom, you have the opportunity to change your background. And if you have a green screen, it's even better. But if you have just a pretty clear surface with not a lot of art on the wall or anything, you can upload virtual backgrounds and actually be in the room when you're talking about it and help them to understand the different rooms in the house with these great visuals. Now, I know when we first went online and Jeremy started sharing his virtual backgrounds, the students got very confused, like, where are you? What's happening? But as you do this and change it back and forth, the students will start to understand that you're not actually in that environment. What Jeremy does is he puts up a virtual background of the countries that the students come from. So every day it's a different country. So they are starting to understand that Jeremy's not actually in the Congo, but that he's put up a picture behind him. And this is a fun thing to do. Well, Jeremy and I had a riot plan taking these pictures actually. But again, it's a really striking visual that helps the students to understand. And what I would use this for here is to introduce the vocabulary to the rooms in a house. And there's a lot of different ways you can use the virtual background if you do have that opportunity. It's super fun. And scavenger hunt. So I've been doing a lot of these, and I think they're a great way to get the students up and moving around. But you can do this not all in one day, but you can do it room by room. So you start with one room. And you can do one item at a time, and as they get used to it, you can give them the 5 items and just cover it and try and get them to remember those things and go find them. And you can see on the right, that's a Zoom picture of all the students holding a mug. And I'll say, show me your mug. And where did you get that mug? In the kitchen. So they're revisiting the vocabulary in a variety of different ways. Where was the frying pan? In the kitchen. Where was the bowl? In the kitchen. So they're repeating it in a different way for a different purpose. And you can do that again for all the different rooms in the house. And it's super fun. Also, when I was doing some of my research, I found virtual house tours. So you can find virtual house tours for your local community, like I did in Calgary, and show them to the students. And you can also show them a dream home, like on the right. And that's a nice video to look at, and it has music, and it's a beautiful home. But after you've done this with your students, after they have viewed it, you can ask those students who have a phone and who are comfortable with this to give the rest of their classmates a tour of their house. You know, you can't be running from room to room with your computer, but you can get the students to say, go to the bedroom, go to the living room, go to the kitchen, and they're up and moving around. You can also get your students who have a computer and you want them to get up and moving around. Ask them, please walk to your kitchen. Stand up and count your steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that they're getting an opportunity to walk around and to go into that room. And then you say, how many steps to your kitchen? We do that in the school a lot, counting our steps, just so we can get up and move around and go to an actual location. And right now, there's so many virtual house tours online because it's the way people are selling houses, so it's great. Okay, so I don't have any more nice picture slides, but I do have some more ideas to share with you. When I was doing research for this theme, I started listening to sound effects, and this is a great